Good morning, class. It's very nice to see you. I am one of your new English teachers. I'm Mrs. Lodge. I don't really recognize any of your faces, but I'm sure I'll get to know you all. Alright. Yes, okay, this is my first day here, so I'm just sort of settling myself in. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and we'll just sort of get started. I guess I will just get started with registration. Yeah? Okay. Angelina? Great. Jason? Marcus? Oh, okay. So okay, great. Just pay attention, and then we'll all work together better. Right? Yeah. Okay. Abigail? Hannah? Louise? Christopher? Or is it Christopher? Would you prefer Christopher or Chris? Okay, we'll work it. We'll go for it. Okay. Tala? Perfect. Laura? Here. Okay. Tabitha? Tabitha's here. Lewis. Lewis appears not to have turned up today, which is fine. Martha. Okay. Callum. Ryan. It's not here today. Okay, that's fine. I'm just here for my own amusement. Neve. Neve's here. Okay. Lily. Darren. Darren's here. Jacob. Oh, we've got two Hannahs. How are you wanting me to differentiate with that? Or do you prefer just one we call Hannah, or you just... Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, and last but not least, Jasper. That's alright. That's good for our first lesson. Better than I would have expected. Education. Okay, so I'm sure you are all aware of the current situation. I am a temporary teacher, sort of just think of me as like a substitute. Yeah. So I will be doing this class for maybe about a month, but just because I'm here for a short time doesn't mean this can't be a happy time. Yeah. So for the meantime, we will be picking up where you left off with The Great Gatsby. Does that sound familiar? I'm not getting anything. Okay, so we could just have a little bit back and forth. I get that I'm a teacher, but I could be like a cool teacher. So we need to build that kind of rapport. Great. Okay. That's great. So we will be picking up from here. Can anyone tell me what chapter you got to? Yeah, that is what it said on the information sheet I got, but I just want. So, what can you all tell me about this book so far? Oh, don't worry, I have read it. Yeah, no, it was like 6-7 years ago. I did it in school like you guys, so really I should be an expert, like a pro. Okay, so what can you guys tell me? Yeah? Okay, so did they just do it like chapter by chapter, or did they start with discussing themes and motifs and all that stuff? Okay. No, we can work with that. Chapter by chapter sounds a lot more interesting. And chapter 3, if I'm correct. Yes, okay. Party chapter. Very exciting. I'm sure this is Riverdale. You have a crazy nightlife, right? Oh gosh, I remember it was for a New Year's party that I threw in the Bon Nuit. We did it Great Gatsby themed because we were going into the 20s. Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, oh, it was so good. Yeah, and then me and my friends, we did this little like cabaret routine, and I had this like gorgeous whatever dress on. It was amazing. So yeah, I totally get the Great Gatsby. Trust me. Okay. So I think we should just start with sort of reading through, not the entire chapter because that's like a snooze, but just covering the important parts. Gatsby's arrival. Okay. Can anyone tell me, does anyone have any knowledge of this? Has anyone read ahead or? Okay, you, what can you tell me about what this chapter represents? Okay, no, that's fine. This chapter represents the hollowness of the American dream. Yeah, so Gatsby's throwing this big party. It's all very good, right? There's lights, there's pools, there's champagne. It's all amazing. But despite the fact that he's throwing this big party, no one even knows who he is, and this is demonstrated by Nick not knowing who he is, right? And so it just shows a shallowness, and people only care about the facade of the person. They don't actually care about the person who's throwing the party. They just care about the party, and it's like selfishness and shallow, and it's all just about the fallacy. So even though Gatsby has achieved all this wealth, he hasn't really achieved happiness, because the American dream, you achieve wealth, but by that you either sacrifice your happiness or you don't achieve happiness. Yeah, so that's what this chapter's about. That's what this starts to demonstrate. What I can call. Okay. So I'm just going to do a bit of reading, and if anyone has any questions, you can just bow your head. Yes. Okay. There was music from my neighbor's house through the summer nights. In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. Would just like to say the word choice used for girls there is very prevalent, showing that after Scott Fitzgerald's sexist, how he sees them as men and girls, so he sees women as more immature than men, which, I mean, okay for the book's time, but it's not right. You need to pay attention to those word choices because they ingrain this sort of subconscious misogyny that comes forth in our day-to-day lives. At high tide in the afternoon, I watched his guest diving from the tower of his raft or taking the sun on the hot sand of his beach, while his two motorboats slid the waters of the Sound, drawing aquaplanes over cataracts of foam. On weekends, his Rolls Royce became an omnibus, bearing parties to and from the city between 9 in the morning and long past midnight, while the station wagon scampered like a brisk yellow bug to meet all trains. And on Monday, 8 servants, including an extra gardener, toiled all day with the mops and the scrubbing brushes and hammers and garden shears and repairing the ravages of the night before. Ravages word choice shows how wild the parties are. Every Friday, you were taking notes, right? Yeah, take notes from what I'm saying. Okay. Every Friday, 5 crates of oranges and lemons arrived from a fruiterer in New York. Every Monday, those same oranges and lemons left his back door in pyramids of pulpless halves. There was a machine in the kitchen which could extract the juice of 200 oranges in half an hour if a little button was pressed 200 times by the butler's thumb. At least once a fortnight. Fortnight is 2 weeks, by the way. Just you pay attention, I didn't know that. A corps of caterers came down with several hundred feet of canvas and enough colored lights to make a Christmas tree of Gatsby's enormous garden. On buffet tables garnished with glistening hors d'oeuvre, spice-baked hams crowded against salads of harlequin designs and pastry pigs and turkeys bewitched to a dark gold. In the main hall, a bar with a real brass rail was set up, stocked with gins and liquors and the cordials so long forgotten that most female guests were too young to know one from another. Again, infantilizing women. Not a good one. By 7 o'clock, the orchestra has arrived. No thin 5-piece affair, but a whole pit full of oboes and trombones and saxophones and viols and cornets and piccolos and low and high drums. Again, the constant repetition of it being in a list emphasizes how many things there are. The last swimmers have come in from the beach now and are dressing upstairs. The car from New York are parked 5 deep in the drive, and already the halls and salons and verandas are gaudy with primary colors and hair bobbed in strange new ways and shawls beyond the dreams of Castile. The bar is in full swing, and floating rounds of cocktails permeate the garden outside until the air is alive with chatter and laughter and casual innuendo and interjections forgotten on the spot, and enthusiastic meetings between women who never knew each other's names. The lights grow brighter as the earth lurches away from the sun, and now the orchestra is playing yellow cocktail music, and the opera of voices pitches key. Laughter is easier minute by minute, tipped out a cheerful word. The group changes more swiftly, swell with new arrivals, dissolve and form in the same breath. Already there are wanderers, confident girls, who weave here and there among the stouter and more stable, become for a joy-sharp moment the centre of a group, and then, excited with triumph, glide on through the sea change of faces and voices and colour under the constant changing of light. The put it to, for example, sea change, dissolve and form, all that sort of give the idea of it being a wave of a crowd, fluctuating and moving, never still, just like the sea. Suddenly, one of these gypsies, in trembling opal, seizes a cocktail out of the air and dumps it down for courage and moves her hands like a frisco, dances out alone on the canvas platform. A momentary hush, the orchestra leader varies his rhythm obligingly to her, and there is a burst of chatter as erroneous news goes around in that she is Gilda Gray's understudy from the Foes. The party has begun. I believe that on the first night I went to Gatsby's house, I was one of the few guests who had actually been invited. People were not invited, they went there. Again, sort of demonstrates how people aren't coming for Gatsby, they're just coming for the party atmosphere. They got into automobiles which bore them out to Long Island. Somehow they ended up at Gatsby's door. Once they were introduced by someone who knew Gatsby, and after that they conducted themselves according to the rules of behaviour associated with an amusement park, again showing how riotous these parties are. Sometimes they came and went without having met Gatsby at all, and came for the party with a simplicity of heart that was its own ticket of admission. I had actually been invited. Again, the I had actually been invited thing. Nick Carey is quite a selfish character. He's not a very reliable narrator. He thinks of himself as important. He thinks of himself as superior to all these people because he's down the party or something. So him saying he's actually been invited is sort of that way of showing this sort of superiority complex that permeates throughout the book. A chauffeur in a uniform of robin eggs blue crossed my lawn early this Saturday morning with a surprisingly formal note from his employer. The honour would be entirely Gatsby's, he said, and I would attend his little party that night. Again, little party, obviously sarcasm. He'd seen me several times and had intended to call on me long before, but a peculiar combination of circumstances had prevented it. Signed a Tree Gatsby in a majestic hand. Majestic word choice also shows how flamboyant and over the top Mr. Gatsby is. Dressed up in white flannels, I went over to his lawn a little after 7 and wandered around rather ill at ease among swift swirls and eddies of people I didn't know, and though there was a face I had noticed on the commuting train. I was immediately shut down by a number of young Englishmen dotted about, all well dressed, all looking a little too hungry, and all talking in low, earnest voices to solid and prosperous Americans. I'm sure they were selling something, bonds or insurance or automobiles. They were at least agonizingly aware of their easy money in the vicinity and convinced that it was theirs for the few words in the right key. This sort of demonstrates the sort of dichotomy between English and Americans. Englishmen, they're very greedy, and in a way so are Americans, but Americans are more foolish and frivolous with their money. As soon as I arrived, I made an attempt to find my host, but the 2 or 3 people of whom I asked his whereabouts stared at me in such an amazed way and denied so vehemently any knowledge of his movements that I slunk off in the direction of the cocktail table, the only place in the garden where a single man could linger without looking purposeless and alone. I was on my way to get roaring drunk from the sheer embarrassment when Jordan Baker came out of the house and stood at the head of the marble steps, leaning a little backward and looking with contemptuous interest down into the garden. Welcome or not, I found it necessary to attach myself to someone before I should go and begin to address cordial remarks to the passers-by. "Hello," I roared, advancing on her. My voice seemed naturally loud across the garden. "I thought I might find you here," she responded absently as I came up. "I remembered you lived next door too." She held my hand impersonally, as a promise that she'd take care of me in a minute, and gave ear to 2 girls in 2 twin yellow dresses who stopped at the front of the steps. "Hello," they cried together. "Sorry you didn't win." That was for the golf tournament. She had lost in the finals the week before. "You don't know who we are," said one of the girls in yellow. "But we met you here about a month ago." "You've dyed your hair since then," remarked Jordan, and I started, but the girls had moved casually on, and her remark was addressed to the premature moon, produced like the supper, no doubt out of a caterer's basket. With Jordan's slender golden arm resting on mine, we descended the steps and sauntered around the garden. A tray of cocktails floated at us through the twilight. Tray of cocktails in shows how the cocktails are more important than the person carrying them, again showing the hollowness of this little party. And we sat down on the table with 2 girls in yellow and 3 men, each one introduced to us as Mr. Mumble. "Do you come to these parties often?" inquired Jordan of the girl next to her. "The last one was the one I met you at," answered the girl in an alert, confident voice. She turned to her companion. "Wasn't it for you, Lucille?" "It was for Lucille, too." "I like to come," Lucille said. "I never care what I do, so I always have a good time. When I was here last, I tore my gown on a chair, and he asked me my name and address. Instead of the week, I got a package from couriers with a new evening gown in it. Shows J. Gatsby's generosity." "Did you keep it?" asked Jordan. "Sure I did. I was going to wear it tonight, but it was too big in the bust and had to be altered. It was gas blue with lavender pleats, $265. There's something funny about a fellow that'll do a thing like that," said the other girl eagerly. "He doesn't want any trouble with anybody. It's quite a passive character." "Who doesn't?" I inquired. "Gatsby? Someone told me." The two girls and Jordan leaned towards her confidentially. "Someone told me that he thought he killed a man once. A thrill passed all over us." The three Mr. Mumbles bent forward and listened eagerly. "I don't think it's so much that," argued Lucille skeptically. "It's more that he was a German spy during the war." One of the men added in confirmation, "I heard that from a man who knew all about him, grew up with him in Germany." He assured us positively. "Oh no," said the first girl. "It couldn't be that, because he was in the American army during the war." As our credulity switched back to her as he leaned forward with enthusiasm. "You look at it, and sometimes when he thinks nobody's looking at him, I bet he killed a man." She narrowed her eyes and shivered. Lucille shivered. We all turned around and looked for Gaston. It was a testimony to the romantic speculation that he inspired that there were whispers about him from those who found little that it was necessary to whisper about in this world. The first supper, there would be another one after midnight, was now being served, and Jordan invited me to join her own party. We were spread around a table on the other side of the garden. There were 3 married couples and Jordan's escort, a persistent undergraduate given to violent innuendo, and obviously under the impression that sooner or later Jordan was going to yield up to a person to a greater or lesser degree, aka a pervert. Instead of rattling, this party had preserved a dignified homogeneity and assumed to itself the function of representing the style nobility of the countryside, East End condescending to the West End and carefully on guard against its spectroscopic gaiety. "Let's get out," whispered Jordan after a somehow wasteful and inappropriate half an hour. "This is too much polite for me." We got up and she explained that we were going to find the host. I had never met him, she said, and it was making me uneasy. The undergraduate nodded in a cynical and melancholy way. The bar, where we glanced first, was crowded, but Gatsby was not there. She could not find him from the top of the steps, and he wasn't on the veranda. On a chance, we tried an important-looking door and walked into the high Gothic library, panelled from carved English oak and probably transported complete for some ruined overseas. A stout, middle-aged man, with enormous owl-eyed spectacles, was sitting somewhat drunk on the edge of the great table, staring with unsteady concentration at the shelves of books. As we entered, he wheeled excitedly around and examined Jordan from head to foot. "What do you think?" he demanded impetuously. "About what?" He waved his hand toward the bookshelves. "About that. As a matter of fact, you needn't bother to ascertain. I ascertained. They're real. The books," he nodded, "absolutely real, have pages and everything. I thought they'd be nice durable cardboard. Matter of fact, they're absolute pages, and here, let me show you." Taking our skepticism for granted, he rushed to the bookcase and turned with volume 1 of the Stoddard Lectures. "See," he cried triumphantly, "it is a bona fide piece of printed matter. It filled me. This ruler is Rallo-Belsko. It's a triumph of thoroughness with realism. You went to stop too, didn't cut the pages. What do you want? What do you expect?" He snatched a book from me and replaced it hastily on the shelf, muttering that if one brick was removed, the whole library was liable to collapse. "Who brought you?" he demanded, "or did you just come?" "I was brought. Most people were brought." Jordan looked at him alertly and cheerfully without answering. "I was brought by a woman named Roosevelt," he continued. "Mrs. Claude Roosevelt. Do you know her?" "I met her somewhere last night. I've been drunk for about a week now. I thought it might swim me up to sit in the library." "Has it?" "A little bit, I think. I can't tell yet. I've only been here an hour. Did I tell you about the books? You told us." We shook hands with them gravely and went back outdoors. They were dancing now on the canvas, old men pushing young girls backwards in a charming graceless circle, superior couples holding out each other tortuously, fashionably and keeping in the corners, and a great number of single girls dancing individualistically or revealing the orchestra for a moment of the burden of the banjo with the traps. By midnight the hilarity had increased. A celebrated tenor had sung in Italian, while a notorious contralto had sung in jazz, and between the numbers of people were doing stunts all over the garden with happy, vacuous bursts of laughter rose towards the summer sky. A pair of stage twins, who turned out to be the girls in yellow, did a baby act in costume, and champagne was served in glasses bigger than finger bowls. The moon had risen higher. Floating in the sand was a triangle of silver scales, trembling a little to the stiff, tinny drops of the banjos on the lawn. I was still with Jordan Baker. We were sitting on a table with a man about my age and a rowdy little girl who gave way upon the slightest provocation to uncontrollable laughter. I was enjoying myself now. I had taken 2 fingerfuls of champagne, and the scene had changed before my eyes into something significant, elemental, and profound. Obviously, this shows that when you get drunk, the sort of vacuousness of the entire affair sort of goes away. And then once you get intoxicated, you don't really notice that and you don't really care. And that's when you begin to enjoy yourself by getting drunk. At a lull in the entertainment, the man looked at me and smiled. "Your face is familiar," he said politely. "Weren't you in the 1st Division during the war?" "Why, yes, I was in the 20th Infantry. I was in the 16th until June 1919. I'd known his about somewhere. We talked for a moment about some wet, grey little villages in France. Evidently he lived in this vicinity, for he told me he just bought a hydroplane and was going to try it out in the morning. Want to go with me, old sport? Just on the shore along the Sound." "What time?" "Any time that suits you best." It was on the tip of my tongue to ask his name when Jordan looked around and smiled. "Having a gay time now?" she inquired. "Much better." I turned around to my new acquaintance. "This is an unusual party for me. I haven't seen the host. I live over there." I waved my hand at the visible hedge in the distance, and this man Gatsby had sent over his chauffeur with an invitation. For a moment he looked at me as if he failed to understand. "I'm Gatsby," he said suddenly. "What?" I exclaimed. "Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought you knew all sport. I'm afraid I'm not a very good host." Right. What do we think of that then? Yes. Any thoughts? Any questions of the material? Great. Okay, well, first we're going to start with a partner task. If you could just partner up with the person next to you. Okay, great. Okay, for the partner task, I want you to go through the bit that we just read and pick out the most notable quotes, and underneath give a reason as to why they're notable about demonstrating the theming of The Great Gatsby. Okay. Is everyone okay with that? Does everyone understand the task? Okay, great. Now, I will give you 10 minutes to do that, and then we can get back and talk about what ones you chose and why you chose them. Okay, great. Sounds excellent.